known for many years as the blind GFK researcher specializing in intelligence agency involvement in multiple assassinations, propaganda, and other global criminal operations in the 20th and 21st centuries.
Your listeners are extremely fortunate to have you.
And now, the most underrated voice in all media.
Ochelli!
19th day of January 2018, allegedly, according to that thing we call a calendar. And this indeed is the Ochelli Effect, broadcast live from the facilities of Ochelli.com, heard on many an affiliate network, including, let's see, right now I can see active RealLibertyMedia.com. What else? WindowsOnTheWorld.net, our friends over at the various other networks. Look, I'm not going to list them anymore, but welcome, and especially the terrestrial micro-broadcasters and that in the Northeast. Appreciate you. Bottom line, it is a Friar's Day, and who do I have in the first hour? I'm not going to sit here and talk too much because in the second hour, we're going wild card, so perfect guest for the first hour, Jim Willie from GoldenJackass.com. Of course, he is the founder of GoldenJackass.com, the editor-in-chief of the Hat Trick newsletter, which you need to go get. You know, when we talk about money and gold and things like this, it is inevitable that somebody says, you need to save that question for when you have Jim Willie on next. And do appreciate the fact that we get him about once a month here, and here he is tonight. I'm so happy to have him. Jim, first of all, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. You know, it's a new year, and I'm rather optimistic that this new year is going to bring some significant change, whereas last year brought the pathways for significant change, and they required more work than perhaps was expected. But now I think we're beginning to see some rather significant events, Chuck.
Well, you know, there's certainly a lot of significant events, some of them in the alleged news media, some of them being covered, and some of them being totally ignored. I guess we should begin where we sort of left off last time, which is, hey, what about this situation regarding China and the RMB and the oil trade kind of thing we were discussing between Russia and what they were purchasing and how this all comes together because, well, apparently a little bit of a delay on what seemed to have been going on just a short time ago as we go into 2018, which, by the way, I agree with you, it's going to be a different year from 2017 without fail. But I need your insight on this because it seems to me as though it's the perfect time for them to really crush the petrodollar entirely, right? Anyway, I turn it to you.
Let me point out two preliminary facts for this Chinese Shanghai RMB oil contract. Last week, Pakistan announced that the United States was no longer their ally. A month ago, Pakistan had announced that the majority of their trade would be settled in RMB Chinese currency. Last month and this month, they worked out a corridor economic development agreement with China. The United States has lost Pakistan as an ally, and here is some unintended consequence for collateral damage. Little known fact, the Pakistan military provides security guards for the Saudi royals. That's big, Chuck. Okay, second factoid. Japan, South Korea, and India are all now buying rather sizable volumes of oil and paying in euros. And the United States government is stuck between a rock and a hard place because they can't exactly say, well, gee, if you're going to do the same thing that Saddam Hussein did and that Iran does on a regular basis, we're going to have to put you on sanctions and eliminate your SWIFT banking transaction privileges. We're not going to do that. So what we got is a development taking place that is not exactly akin to the what I was describing earlier in previous interviews as the dual universe of the dollar and the RMB. We might instead be having a trio universe of the dollar, euro, and RMB. It's hard to say, but the euro already has some volume in global trade. And just imagine, for instance, if Germany makes a decision on much more amplified trade with China, they might want to alter their existing payment system, and it might include a lot more euros. And if it doesn't, then Germany's going to be subject to what's happening with the euro. The result of Japan and South Korea and India paying for more oil in euros is that the euro is rising and the dollar is slipping. Okay. When it comes to the RMB oil contract, one must view it in context with the background of what was already set in place a few months ago. I think it was August, of the oil gold contract in Shanghai. So when you get the RMB oil contract, it's not just going to be a sword in the flank of the petrodollar. It's going to be the completion of a triangle, the RMB oil gold triangle. So Russia could sell oil to China, receive RMB from the oil contract, and immediately convert it to gold with the other oil contract, because the triangle is completed. And Russia has a Sberbank branch, big important branch in Beijing right now, and I think they're going to be doing most of the financial processing behind whatever gold purchase takes place.
Well,
now, when people tell me, let me make it the final point.
Sure.
When people tell me, oh gosh, here you go again, the Chinese are delaying, it's never going to happen. Okay, that's your moron talking. I regard the Chinese as actively beginning a formal Chinese water torture. We had notice of, what was it, mid-December for the RMB oil contract. I can't remember exactly, but I think it was also scheduled in the end of October. So look at it this way. The Chinese are testing the U.S. flanks. They're saying, what are you going to do about it? What's your plan? Because we got, a launch of the Petro Yuan contract. It's imminent. What are you going to do? What are you going to do, New York? You handlers for Washington. What are you going to do? All right, so they're testing the U.S. reaction, and then they delay and get to test all over again. So the United States is going to reveal that it doesn't have the ability to obstruct it, and it's going to be quite plain. So I see two effects. The United States is going to reveal itself as a paper tiger with threats of no more than interruption in the South China Sea. Oh gosh, how weak is that? The other effect is going to be all the naysayers, all those morons and idiots and paid shills out of New York, Wall Street, and Washington writing economic analysis bullshit reports. They're going to come forth and say, well, we're now growing in ranks because more and more analysts don't believe that China's ever going to do it. So when they do it, it'll have an even bigger effect. So they're revealing the U.S. weakness, and they're going to bring about a bigger effect when it finally happens. I think this is pretty much the death warrant for the dollar as the global reserve currency. That's how important it is. It's perhaps the biggest and most important financial event in a generation. I know it sounds like hyperbole and silly exaggeration. Find me another single event since the petrodollar de facto standard was put in place that is as important. Iran sanctions? No, I don't think so. Ukrainian war to block Gazprom? Yeah, that's important, but no, it's not. That's nothing compared to China snatching from the United States their petrodollar standard and luring Saudi Arabia to join in, with the carrot being the Aramco investment. Oh my gosh, this is so big. I don't care, Chuck, if it's delayed 3-4 more times until June. The effect, sequentially, of a delay and a new date, and it's like a stay of execution. Just because, some guy on death row got 4 straight stays of execution, that doesn't mean he's going to avoid the needle or the hangman's noose. It just means he gets tortured more. And all those people who care about him, if they have any, they just go into miserable condition with raised hopes, dashed hopes, raised hopes. I mean, that cycle is horrible. What's coming for the dollar is a water torture by China.
Well, with that in mind, there was a couple of other questions that I can link to this, because I just got a live question about the significance of the Brexit situation, because therefore this is somebody who's in the UK wondering exactly what it's going to do to the English economy, because if they're getting out, they're not part of this situation with the euro, right? That's the assertion being made by the person. But also, I think it's the same individual who asked me about the significance of the Saudi prince making a visit, to officially to May's government over there, as it stands at the moment, given the permission of the King's office, which is held by the alleged Queen. All of that happening. Right? Is this all part of the same equation? And, crazy thing about Pakistan, I thought that they were key global allies in so many different ways that we couldn't afford to lose them. The U.S., that is, the we, right? Sounds to me like the Saudis needed them pretty badly, from what you're saying, and I'm trying to put this all together into a snapshot and figure it out. What is this I'm trying to get at here?
Well, look at Pakistan from a different spectrum. I mean, forget their dollar stance, forget their RMB adoption, forget their corridor economic development. Just think of them versus India. Well, now the United States can say to India, well, you got a real big enemy there. You need to be our buddies now. You need to be our friends more than ever. We need to tighten the U.S.-British alliance with India. You need us more than ever, because now you're under the threat of a Chinese attack by way of Pakistan. You better be careful. I mean, line up with us, with the banks and the military, and we'll protect you. Okay, that's a very firm angle. That must be kept in mind. But I think it's going to be a weak angle, because the Chinese are not going to threaten India. The Chinese are going to work with Pakistan to remove and reduce tensions and try to build up more economic development, and to work on the Iran-Pakistan connection commercially with ports, and invite India to join, to improve their economic situation, and to give up on the constant war tension theme that the Anglo-Americans engage in. All right, let me get to Brexit. Mm-hmm. All right, the euro is rising. Now, that probably means that the advantage economically that the British have for trade to Europe is increasing, because it means the British pound is probably lower than it was several months ago versus the euro. Now, one of the biggest disadvantages for, say, Italy, Greece, and Spain is that they don't have a weakened currency in order to bring about economic stimulus and improve their trade position. Now British economy does. Okay, that's very important. Now, notice that there's some very significant events just in the last couple of months with respect to London. I'm not referring to Brexit so much as maybe filling the vacuum and completing a linkage. The British have been making deals with China. Now, they might have lost some connections with Europe, but they're going to regain many of them. What they're going to gain is connection to China. First, this happened during the last year of the Obama administration. I mean, I kind of turned my stomach when I even mentioned Obama administration because it was abominable. The Chinese sent a delegation to Beijing to work toward financial ties and to strengthen the whole birth process of the RMB trade hub, the trading hub in London, that will be used for bond issuance in RMB and RMB Forex exchange. So it's bonds and currency. During the abominable administration, the British...
You don't even want to say it. That's how bad
well,
it is.
It doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. I need a little more practice. The abominable administration got very angry at the British because they signed on as a member to the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, AIIB, which has pretty much buried the IMF and made it so that it really doesn't have much of any interesting stories or policies. Okay, so now they sent a prince to England. Okay, isn't that interesting? What for? Are the British working on some big trade deal with the Saudis? Economic deal with the Saudis? Or is it a weapons deal? Oh, I don't know. The Americans have the lock on that. Here's a different angle for you to consider. For over a month now, Prince Mohammed bin Salman has had a large group of like 40 or 50 princes and other royals and business executives of important corporations arrested and under kind of a house arrest in a luxurious hotel called the Riyadh Ritz-Carlton.
Which we talked about last time on the show with you, and you described in depth. Yes, right.
Now, since then, we've heard that Prince Al-Walid has been hanged by his feet and beaten. Not one royal has come to his defense, either to plead or to buy his release, and Al-Walid is reportedly very stubborn and will not pay something like 30 or 40% of his wealth in order to run free. This isn't a corruption investigation. It's pretty much a shakedown of deeply corrupted people. Now, I don't mean to give the description that it's a shakedown of innocent people to see what falls out of their pockets, and that's the origin of the word shakedown. It's instead lining up people in the royal crowd and in the business crowd that have basically sequestered and hogged the Saudi wealth engine. Okay, well, that's fine. But Al-Walid is not giving up anything. And reportedly, they must give up something like 35-40% of their wealth, and they can walk free. So it's like a royal tax on all his cohorts. Now, if a prince is going to London, my guess is it's for a different purpose than what you might imagine. I don't think like most people do. I think in terms of financial hidden angles. When the corruption charges began and the widespread arrest sweep took place, I had a couple colleagues say to me and a couple of different important clients. I keep contact with 30 or 40 different clients, and it's like an extended group of colleagues. But the whole message that I heard, Chuck, was, well, good luck in obtaining that money. If they shake down $100 billion, as they reportedly did, it probably was $100 billion in pledges. Well, good luck landing all that money, because it's probably not in Saudi Arabia. And I heard it's in European and London banks, maybe some in Asia like Hong Kong, but the bulk would be in European and London banks.
Okay.
So a month later, now we have a dignitary going to London, and my guess is to facilitate the securing of foreign accounts by the Saudi royals, who might have been beaten and hung upside down.
Oh, so he's going to go and cash, I mean, in a symbolic way, not necessarily like this, but basically what's happened here is they wrote him some checks, and he's got to go to the London branch to go cash them. Is that about it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go to the London Bridge. Well, look, London is a big financial center. London has a lot of big banks. Barclays, Lloyds, you name it. They got big banks there.
Right.
And it's not a secret. Saudi royals have a colossal amount of London property. They don't have London property without London accounts. So I'm thinking that's what it's all about. They're going there to make sure that the British can facilitate the raiding of Saudi royal accounts and probably get a commission.
Okay.
I mean, can you imagine if there's a $3 billion account and the British are told, well, you get a 10% commission on that if you can, loosen it up a bit. That's $300 million.
Right. Right. Well,
it's
look,
only 5%.
if you're shaking somebody down, right, you gotta give the guys that are there facilitating that a cut, no matter what business you're in, Jim. I mean, right?
It's just completing the loop, and to complete loops in the financial sector, you got to pay commissions. I mean, the United States is the expert on this. They charge I call it a ferryman toll for all swift passage. Okay, this is not new. I mean, you wouldn't believe some of the stuff going on with the U.S. Department of Treasury and foreign banks regarding U.S. citizen and U.S. corporation accounts. You would not believe what's going on. And I will leave that topic alone. Let's move to the next one.
Well, just one quick thing to add there, though, because here's another question that came in while you were talking, was about actually a U.S. financial transaction that's been reported upon recently that's supposed to go down regarding Apple returning money to U.S.-based banks, supposedly, and they wanted to know if you had any information on that.
No, I don't really have any information, but I can guarantee you something. If Apple has a significant amount of money, and I'm quite sure they do, it's in the billions. Their cash account is in the billions and has been ever since their iPod, iPad, and whatever phone.
Whenever they started making the toys, yeah.
Tremendous cash flow. If Apple works out a deal, I guarantee you it will be a sweet deal to Apple. And I've said this in a couple of other interviews. The United States and the Trump administration needs to have very firm control over repatriated cash so that it does not end up just like the 2007 case where the majority went to executive compensations, stock buybacks, and dividend payouts, with almost nothing going to business expansion and job creation.
Well, that's been the pattern for a while. It seems like that's why Wall Street is doing so well, even, is because, hey, look, if you buy back your own stock and you sort of keep that value propped up nicely, your numbers look great. It doesn't mean that you're actually doing any business, expanding anything or whatever, but I mean, isn't that the reality all the way around with these larger corporations? That's been like the standard for quite some time, Jim, right?
Yeah, and their profits are going down, and their financial gimmicks for accounting are increasing. I mean, I make a very general slam that the S&P 500 and their forward earnings estimates are an absolute farce. So when you when you conduct these little calculations of their price-earning ratios for forward earnings, the emphasis is on forward, and they don't want to look at the past, because that would reveal how last year's forward earnings were all kooky, gimmicked, and false. So the PE earnings are high, and they're extraordinarily high when you factor in the fact that they're all wrong.
Well,
why are they laying off if they got such great earnings? And don't bring in this robotics argument. I don't buy that. I don't think that's a significant cost reduction scheme for U.S. industry. Well, I think they're cutting people and jobs because their business is going to crap.
No, absolutely. Look, not at this time is the robotics element the key factor that's causing that. Could it be something in the future that will do this? Yes, I do believe so. But at this time, it is not. It's just not there yet. You know, isn't there
Amazon
yet. Right?
has 35% of all the growth in robotic hiring.
Right.
I mean, it's not widespread. It's very concentrated.
No, I know. And
I brought up robotics. That's a big can of worms. But the main point I'm trying to make regarding Apple is the companies that come forward and make initiatives that are very cooperative and show energy and motivation in getting them done, they're working out tremendous sweet deals. If you as a citizen have a $5 million bank account sitting in Panama, and you want to bring it home, I guarantee you're going to have a tough time under 20%.
Yeah, good luck with that. Exactly. Okay, let's absolutely change gears, but a little bit of linkage to part of what you were discussing before, because you did mention Japan, and a handful of listeners actually want to know what you thought of, well, as reported recently, just this past week, right? There was this missile warning that went out. You did mention South Korea before, but let's talk North Korea, because supposedly it was coming from North Korea to Hawaii, and then NHK, I think it's called over there in Japan, had an emergency alert of its own, both of them. False alarms, interesting little psyop. I mean, we could get into the elements of that, but I don't want to do that with you, Jim. I really, and the listeners that asked about this really want to hear what your opinion is regarding why that happened. I mean, there's always a financial angle to everything. I don't know if this is financial or this is just psychological warfare or political gamesmanship. The whole thing is very bizarre, and I leave it open to whatever it is you feel like saying about it, because they wanted me to ask you. So.
Okay, let me start with a preliminary. It's not going to be off the point at all. If you wanted to rob the safe of a corporate building, wouldn't it be a good idea to pull the fire alarm? Yeah. Okay, you do the fire alarm, and you get to see all the protocol. You get to see who's going where, who's in charge, who has the emergency authority. But meanwhile, something's not guarded. And that could be your target, and maybe it's not a known target. It's your target. You want to get, say, a certain file for a certain trademark and a certain deal with a country that's a little obscure. Okay, you've got your target, you pull the fire alarm, and you go get it while everybody's distracted and running around like maniacs. Okay. If there's another example, a man just robbed something within a building, and he wants some big diversion so he can get out, leave the building safely, and go home, go wherever. So he pulls the fire alarm. And everything gets wacky, everything's crazy, people going in all different directions. And he slugs some rent-a-cop, grabs his uniform, and makes his way out the door in full view. Okay, these are standard techniques. Okay, now who stated that the Chinese were behind the Hawaiian event. Let's just call it the event. I don't want to label it something that it wasn't.
Okay.
The Hawaiian event. It was the news networks in the United States, and it might have been from a military contribution into the news networks. Okay, how reliable have the news networks been, for instance, say, in the presidential campaign? How reliable is the U.S. news networks, for instance, in economic reporting? How reliable is U.S. networks with respect to, say, pedophilia and indictments of elites? Their record is horrendous. So, when I read that the Chinese were fingered with the Hawaiian event, I don't say, oh my gosh, isn't that horrible? It evokes my laughter. I seriously doubt the Chinese had anything to do with the entire event. Such an insinuation sounds like typical Washington fascist control propaganda. I'm hearing a very interesting story full of intrigue on the Hawaiian event, and it goes completely counter to the Chinese story. It might have been a false drill to force a massive data dump. And, oh gosh, I had the name of what they call it. There's a military name for the data dump. Data transfer, emergency data transfer, something like that. Anyway, it triggers a protocol. Here it is. I wrote it down in my own notes. How about that? Bulk data transfer.
Okay.
The false drill forces a massive dump for security reasons into the Pentagon hands. I argue that the Pentagon, working with Trump, have formed what's commonly called the White Hats. The White Hats have an opposing group, and they're very different, and they're, in my opinion, the narcos, the Langley narcos. And if there's a false flag attack, it's usually by the Langley narcos. If you want to look for dirty hands in 9/11, look at the Langley narcos. You want to look at the interrupted nuclear self-imposed hits. During the Obama administration, there were 3. Look at the Langley narcos. And those resignations of generals and admirals afterwards, those are the ones who interrupted them. Okay, so the objective might have been to force a bulk data transfer into the white hat hands at the Pentagon. So the procedure for DEFCON went into automatic, and just by the way, both Clintons were in Hawaii at the time. Were they there to maybe bribe people and attempt to secure and delete some files? Well, now those files, as part of the bulk data transfer, are in the white hat hands. And the files on the State Department and the emails the same. In other words, burn, baby, burn, Hillary.
So
the news networks had notice of the event before it happened. That goes completely, diametrically opposed to the Chinese story of their involvement.
Well,
U.S. networks also had 15 to 20 minutes advance notice of the 9/11 events. In other words, inside job. Except the Hawaii event seems like an inside job to force a defecation by the Langley narcos where the dump goes into the white hats. This could be a very constructive event, as opposed to what the news networks portray as a very dangerous situation. Now, could the same exact sequence have been done off the coast of Japan? Yeah, of course. They've got a dark element controlling their government as well, and they're losing control. So there might have been a bulk data transfer dump In Japan, just like Hawaii. Now, in the United States and Hawaii, it's burn, baby, burn Hillary. In Japan, it's burn, baby, burn Abe.
Okay. Well, you know what's interesting about that is now, instead of pulling the fire alarm to rob the safe, what you've done is pulled the fire alarm hoping that the fire people will go into action, and also the suppression systems, and maybe they'll guard the safe because actually you're after the computer and you can get to walk away with that because nobody's bothering with that. They're too busy with other things. That's what it sounds like to me. Is that about right?
Yeah, these are automatic data dumps. We're talking about, terabits of data being dumped in order to protect the United States and the mainland. And in that big batch are the Hillary files that are so well guarded. It could be that the White Hats decided the only way we're going to get our hands on this is to do a false drill. The arguments for the false drill to dump it into the White Hat, it just makes 10 times more sense than the Chinese argument. And the fact that the news networks had advance notice, to me, confirms it.
Well, the initial reports that I understood, right, was the White House stated that, this is just a drill anyway. And, it seemed like they didn't really have any other handle on it outside of what it just would appear to be from the outside. It seemed as though the official pronouncements didn't give a hint of any of that. But then again, aren't official pronouncements designed to make sure nobody's paying attention to what's actually happening? No, nothing to see here anyway. I mean, that's just the standard,
do you really think
right?
Trump would go out and say we're going to do a false drill in order to force some data dump in the terabyte volume from the Langley narcos so that we can go after Hillary and capture a whole lot more elites? You think that's going to be a press conference message?
No, I don't think so at all.
No,
that
that's play dumb.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, man, that is a wild thing to wrap your mind around, though, when you think about it. And meanwhile, hey, look, the people in Hawaii, you can't blame them for reacting because looked pretty real, didn't it? As far as they were concerned.
How it looks. Mm-hmm. I'm tired of silly reaction and overreaction on things that look dangerous and dire. I mean, almost nothing is as it seems. And gosh, there's some quotes from CI directors in the past that are just horrendous and horrible. Once the American public is misled on every single event, we can claim that the CIA has done their job.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one thing after another. I'm tired of it.
Well, with that in mind, though, North Korea, right, and this whole wrangling over whether there's going to be discussions between North Korea and South Korea, and then there were, and it's supposed to be about the Olympics and keeping that calm. The business angle is totally missed here because regardless of what sanctions go on or who's arguing with who on Twitter or whatever else, it seems to me as though there's going to be a big money transfer, and that this is what somebody told me anyways, that there's going to be some sort of big extraction of wealth from that area coming very soon to place it in the hands of someone else, maybe to make them more of a factor in this Asian trading group that's coming together that's going to work right alongside with Russia and be part of that triangle you were talking about there in the initial discussion here. Does it seem like this is all sort of, the show to keep people distracted from what's actually really being aligned as far as financial alignments, which, of course, lead to military engagements because it's profitable either way? But is this going to change things? I mean, are we going to see North Korea really change a lot on the world stage very soon, or are they going to go away as our favorite, boogeyman target? Be very wary. They're going to start attacking us or Japan or somebody. I mean, how do you feel about that particular situation?
Let me start off with my attitude for the last 25 years. And, I don't mean to be flip. I don't mean to be arrogant, but I'm practical. I don't like wasting my time. I mean, one thing you know about mathematicians, they push to the side all the pieces to the solution that don't help toward the solution. What's the extraneous information here? Okay, push it aside. What do I need to solve this problem mathematically? All right, let's put that on the table and let's work this out. Okay, bottom line, got it solved. For 25 years, I've ignored North Korea, and I've never missed anything. 25 years, I've never missed anything, Chuck. So now, when North Korea came onto the radar, I put my head together with a couple of Jackass colleagues, and The Voice and a couple of others mentioned something that made a lot of sense. There's a fight going on for the heroin production in North Korea. And then later, there's another battle going on for the illegal amphetamine trade coming out of North Korea. So we're talking about illicit drugs and huge income coming out of North Korea. Where's it going to go? Can it be directed toward constructive economic development, or will it go into the Langley narco hands? By the way, it's always been in the Langley narco hands. Dirty little secret. The Bush crime family has had connections to the heroin trade in North Korea for a very long time. So when I read stories about North Korea, I look for two little wavelengths. Is there anything in this North Korea story about heroin? Is there anything in this North Korea story about amphetamine? No. I move on. Okay, I don't really give a crap, honestly, whether the women's hockey team of North and South Korea operate under the same team and the same flag. I don't really care. I care about the 60 tons of heroin coming out of North Korea. Who's got the income stream? What's it going to be used for? Will it be used for bribing government officials around the globe towards staying with the dollar and moving toward the global fascist state New World Order? Or will it go into economic development of one of the most wretched nations in the world, of North Korea, to bring them up to speed a little bit more with respect to China and South Korea, their two neighbors? Because the entire region there is going to be a very important, integral part of the Eurasian trade zone, whether Washington likes it or not. The Japanese are dumping their treasury bonds. The Japanese are making important energy deals with the Russians, LNG and pipeline toward, the Sakhalin area. The South Koreans are a different story. I don't want to get into a whole lot, but they're having some serious spats with the Chinese. And, they're blocking, tourism and stuff like that. The United States is loving it. I mean, it's like the South China Sea for a success story. South Korea versus China. They're having a spat. Oh, isn't that great? We love it. The United States and the government is not about constructive engagement. It's about win-lose. It's about destabilization, arms deals, stolen gold, and heroin. That's what our country's leadership has become, Chuck. It's really sickening. We're going to become more and more isolated because we're not engaged in economic development.
Well, and the longer that we participate in the worldwide heroin paradigm or the opiate paradigm or whatever it is you want to call it, I mean, the more decrepit things become, quite honestly. But can you give people an idea? I mean, when you mention something like 60 tons of heroin, I mean, what type of dollar figures are we talking about here that could be repurposed for one of these things that you're talking about regarding, hey, is it going to be used to bribe politicians? I mean, is it a significant amount compared to what's out there on the world scene? I mean, it's certainly not, the grand factory that Afghanistan is, But what are we talking about here in terms of effective capital, like in the illicit drug trade? I mean, you have any ideas about that?
Sure do. Afghanistan is about 1,200 tons a year of heroin. That's what the U.S.-led factions produce with their chemical factories. I mean, you see movies of crazy-looking Latinos with their pant legs rolled up, stomping into the the poppy, okay, and trying to mix it up. Well, the U.S. doesn't use that in Afghanistan. We use industrial processes with tanker trucks of chemicals. And it's like the United States loves the lawless land because that's where we could develop their crime syndicate production. All right, let's just get some simple numbers here, Chuck. You asked, to wrap some numbers around it, bring it perspective.
Right.
Okay. North Korea, 60 tons of heroin. Afghanistan, 1,200 tons. That's 20 times bigger, right?
Right.
Okay, Afghanistan is about $800 billion a year. Divide by 20, and you get $40 billion a year. $40 billion is a lot for a little country like North Korea. That's a lot. Let's put it in a slightly different comparative perspective. Panama Canal. I mean, that's right in my backyard. I've been down there a few times. I've been on 2 different museum tours there. It's a fascinating little museum, 4 stories. The bottom floor is for the construction. The next floor of the museum is about insects. The 3rd story is about plant life, and the 4th story is about the roots and the locks for the canal. The Panama Canal generates $8 billion a year in revenue. Given that they're 1/100th the size of the United States, multiply that $8 billion by 100, wouldn't it be nice if the United States had an $800 billion revenue stream? Yeah, sure would. Okay, North Korea has a $40 billion revenue stream, but I guarantee you it's not going into economic development for North Korea. I guarantee you also a cut like 10 or 15% is going into their national leaders' private foreign accounts, like in Singapore or Tokyo. I doubt Seoul, South Korea. Japan or Singapore. Okay, $40 billion a year is roughly the value, okay? That's napkin math. Not minor.
Well, no, that was the point I wanted to make, is that, it's a very small place, and it's certainly not on the scale of Afghanistan's production, but it's still significant. Right? I mean, in a regional sense, I mean, that's an excellent producer. If I remove all moral concepts from it, or, the idea that people are destroyed by this stuff or whatever else, hey, forget all that. Just as a business model, it buys them a lot of influence, though, doesn't it?
It does. I just checked the North Korea population. It's 25 million. Okay, so United States is about, 12 times bigger. $40 billion a year, multiplied by 12, you got about $500 billion equivalent of heroin. So the comparison of North Korea to the U.S. population and production of Afghan heroin is pretty similar. We're talking about a lot of money and a lot of bribery capital, a lot of money to help in the construction of underground cities, and maybe to buy and develop a high-speed aircraft.
And meanwhile,
spacecraft.
Yeah,
the United States has a fleet of million-mile-per-hour spacecraft using anti-gravitational propulsion systems. We have a fleet of them. I heard this from a very well-informed hat-trick letter client whose still got one foot in the U.S. military and has seen demonstrations in California of anti-gravitational aircraft. They are absolutely silent, and they don't have any kind of a wind exhaust, like it doesn't blow your jacket or hat off.
Right.
We've got a fleet, and he tells me that this has been going on for 30 years. And when U.S. goes in to steal foreign central bank gold, we're doing just the same exact thing that the Nazis did in World War II, pilfering central bank gold all across Eastern Europe. The U.S. uses it to finance the construction of underground cities for the elite and the space program, they call it the deep space program. It's a hot topic for Catherine Austin Fitts. We've got million-mile-an-hour spacecraft. And the other thing that this military contact hat-trick letter client says is that at least 30 to 40% of all UFO sightings in the United States are the U.S. military going out and having joyrides. Now, here's one of the beautiful things about whether it's a triangular or a disc-shaped spacecraft that can do incredible maneuvers and move at Mach 3, no problem. When the craft moves at that speed with tremendous acceleration, the pilot does not suffer any G-forces. He's just moving with the field.
Well, I've had somebody explain to me how these things kind of function with the magnetism and how, if you displace what's in front and replace it from behind, there is no G-force issue. And I can't explain it, Jim. Don't even ask me to try. But the way it was explained to me, it actually sounds fairly logical. Now, these huge speeds are frightening to me. But, these accelerations that are just incomprehensible in my mind. I mean, how many things have you ever physically seen move 1,000,000 miles an hour,
But you don't see them. They appear to be a streak. Here's a little analogy to keep your head screwed on. Anytime you've got an electric motor, if you open it up inside, you see a lot of wrapped coils, copper coils. What they got inside is a very nice, compact electromagnetic field that produces an electric current. The electric current is used as an energy source for your little power pack to say, turn a fan, or turn an engine, or turn a drill bit. And if you got a big drill bit, you're turning it at tremendous torque. So my question is this. When you see that electric engine operating, does it have a big wind exhaust? Not a bit. It's an electromagnetic field. And that's the propulsion system for these spacecraft. The only little breeze you feel in the back end of a little electric motor is the fan to keep it cooled.
Well, there you go. And, we've discussed these donut-shaped sort of things, these configurations where the coils are made in this one particular shape, and then when they're activated, they do precisely what you're describing. And it's wild stuff, man. I don't, again, I'm not going to claim that I can fully wrap my head around it, but it's pretty interesting. Before we get into anything else, though, Jim,
can I add something, Chuck?
Oh, listen, absolutely.
A quick point. If you accept that electromagnetic fields can produce an electric engine for your use in a fan or a drill bit or whatever, an engine, then you must therefore accept that such powerful propulsion systems can be used on a bigger scale for aircraft.
Oh, yeah, I do.
It's the same principle. It's just a lot more refined and a lot more compacted and tremendously greater electric fields.
Oh, no, that's the thing, is I can extrapolate out from the smaller demonstrations that these things are possible. I don't think what you're describing is at all, some people would say, look, that's just an impossibility to move a physical object at that kind of speed and not have some sort of problems because of resistance. And you're not thinking, the whole thing.
Well, then how do you move the camshaft that operates a drill bit?
No, I get it.
It's the same energy force, same electromagnetic field.
Yeah.
Okay, so instead of a camshaft moving a drill bit, you're pushing an aircraft.
No, I get it. With the toroid, especially with the toroidal configuration, I'm telling you, it does work. It's one of those things that they leave out of when they explain to most electricians the magnetic properties of these things that are, now being understood by people. And as soon as you get a hold of a piece of knowledge like that, it's going to be expounded upon, especially by the military and all those kinds of groups. DARPA
Chuck,
already had it.
1929 patent on this process turned out spacecraft moving at 1 million miles an hour. 1929 patent that was taken in by the U.S. military and not made public. This is not new stuff.
Oh, I know. It's new to me, but it's not new stuff. I get it. Believe me, I understand what you're saying. And this is an absolutely fascinating subject. We could do a whole hour on it, really, if we wanted to break it down.
Bring in an expert for that hour, because that's not me.
No, I know, but
I just touched a little bit from a, not a novice, but just a kind of a journeyman scientist type.
No, I would love to have an engineer who's very familiar with this stuff really break it down, but those guys are kind of hard to find.
Well, they're hidden and paid tremendous salaries working for U.S. government research. And get this, I've met one. I've got one as a Hat Trick Letter subscriber. I met him in 2010. I won't mention his name, but he worked on the HARP project and other projects. And that was 15 years ago, and he quit because he didn't like the sociopaths and the criminality mindset that he found in the U.S. government research tank facilities. They were putting out some pretty clever stuff. And I'm telling you, this client made me look like, not an imbecile, but made me look like a run-of-the-mill American 85 IQ. This was a very intelligent guy, and I asked him, do you maintain any contacts with anybody on friendly terms who are still in the U.S. military think tanks and weapons research? And he said, just one. He's working in the HARP project. And Jim, I got to tell you, he's a bit of a psychopath. And I maintain friendship with him only to milk him for information because I don't like the guy. He said, I didn't like much of anybody I knew in those research tank facilities developing weapons. And we militarized the HARP. It could have been something to alleviate drought, to reduce the power of a hurricane, but we've done just the opposite. We use it to make a drought and to create a hurricane, like for Puerto Rico, that got 3 consecutive hurricanes in a 40-day period that has never happened in the history of the mankind.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
That's what you call a 5 sigma event.
There you go. And, before I'm extending you just a couple of minutes here for one reason only, and that is that I want you to tell people about the Hat Trick newsletter because they can get it over at goldenjackass.com. Maybe give them a little taste of what's upcoming in the newsletter, and do advise that you subscribe to it. Golden Jackass, that's right, all one word, goldenjackass.com. You go over there, and it's easy enough to find. It's plainly marked there. So even if you are typically of the IQ level of the average U.S. citizen, it is there so long as you can read. You can find it. And what is upcoming in the Hat Trick newsletter, Jim?
Well, I gave away some of the content hotspots. It's the Pakistan angle. It's the Chinese water torture for the release of the new oil RMB contract. It's more development of the Eurasian trade zone, more attitude problems by the United States that will increase its isolation. There's some things regarding the Swiss who are caught in a bind right now. They've had ever since 2012 or so that Euro-Swiss peg that has been extended to the dollar and gold, and now they're trapped. They can't do anything without causing tremendous financial problems throughout the Swiss banking system, and it was kind of fun watching them squirm. So, I'm still watching the Aramco deal. I'm hearing that it's back on, and I cannot get a good answer for what city for their stock exchange is going to host the Aramco IPO. I don't think it's going to be New York. I don't think that's going to happen at all. You cannot have lawsuit and open field hunting on Saudi assets in the United States financial system related to the false claim that they're involved with 9/11. No, they were the patsy that were bought by Prince Bandar. I don't think it'll be London, but it just might be. China might arrange for it to be London as a favor in return for London doing something that China wants. So that's how things work with the Eurasian Trade Zone development. I think Hong Kong is going to get the listing, but it'll also be in the Riyadh Stock Exchange, which is very minor. There are a number of stories, but I'm going to try this month to make a very serious attempt to condense the hat trick letter, because something remarkable has happened. It's the last thing I'll say. I'm going on a bit. The hat trick letter for the last 5 years or so has been talking about the demise of the petrodollar, the rise of the Chinese-led non-dollar platforms, the integration and development of the Eurasian trade zone, and several related topics having to do with the end of the dollar as a global reserve currency and the introduction of say, the gold trade note. These things are beginning to come to pass. This is a mega forecast, and it's coming to pass, and there's no need to say it's coming when it's here. So I'm condensing the hat trick letter, and I'm not going to. This is the same sort of thing happened in 2008. I didn't need to talk about the coming housing and mortgage crisis and collapse, because it happened. Now we're having the actual occurrence of the death of the petrodollar and the rise of the Eurasian trade zone and the petro-yuan with, the various non-dollar platforms. It's happening. I don't need to say it's going to happen. It's happening. So I'm going to condense and follow the events of its happening rather than claim that it's going to happen. That's a very big change, and it's the second sea change that I've had with the hat trick letter since it started in 2004. So it changed in 2008 after Lehman, and now it's changing in 2018 with the imminent end of the petrodollar and global currency reserve for the dollar. This is the beginning of the dual universe, Chuck, the dollar and the RMB. And it's very exciting, but it's also dangerous. And the United States is going to be caught in a situation where they cannot declare war on two-thirds of the country, two-thirds of the list of community of nations. We cannot declare war and sanctions on two-thirds of planet Earth. That's what will bring about the dual universe of the dollar and RMB. Well, and we're not going to win that battle. It's going to just be gradual gains for the RMB in banking reserves, in trade payments, in contracts, multi-billion-dollar contracts like infrastructure. The United States is going to lose every single battle because we got a phony-backed dollar. I made a forecast in 2004. In several years, it's going to be quite evident that the dollar will be defended and backed by military force.
Well, here we are.
Here we are.
And that is the bottom line. Again, Jim Willie at goldenjackass.com. The Hat Trick newsletter might change a bit, but 2018, Jim, is going to be an interesting year, like we said at the beginning of this broadcast. I got to say that you need to stay tuned in to what Jim Willie's talking about over there at his site, goldenjackass.com. Jim, thanks so much for coming on tonight.
Oh, it's a pleasure being on. I think the Chinese will delay by only about 2 weeks their R&B oil contract fund. All right, thanks for having me on.
There you have it, folks. Jim Willie, goldenjackass.com. In the next hour, I will actually take some of your calls, and we'll go into some other directions here on the Ochelli Effect. Stay tuned. WallStreetWindow.com. Gold, silver, the stock market. WallStreetWindow.com. The brilliant author of The War State brings you exclusive reports about the big changes upcoming in the markets. WallStreetWindow.com. Perhaps you're invested deeply. Perhaps you're not in deep enough. Maybe you're thinking about getting started. WallStreetWindow.com. Michael Swanson, the brilliant author of The War State, understood these trends professionally for many years, and now he gives you the benefit of his knowledge. WallStreetWindow.com. Go there now. Go there now. Go there now.
We should learn from our relatively recent history, my brother. That's where I'm coming from. I say all power to the people.
And now, the most underrated voice in all media.
What?
Chuck Ochelli.
Second hour of the Ochelli Effect begins now here at Ochelli.com. Do appreciate you for tuning in, no matter how it is you have decided to join the show. Could be a post-live show. Of course, we are live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time here in the U.S., that is. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, right? Of course, if you're in Europe, it might be a slightly different day or something like that. And on the other side of the world, in Oceania, God knows what day or time it is. Anyway, you're probably catching this via the podcast because live listenership is definitely down. But there is a live stream 24/7 at Ochelli.com. And also, if you use things like the TuneIn app and stuff like that on your smart or stupid phone, depending on who you're speaking to, guess what? You can tune into this 24 hours a day, along with a little bit of music. Some of it we play on the show, and some of it we do not. But anyway, there is a 24/7 radio station, and you can find everything at Ochelli.com. So, do appreciate you guys for tuning in, like I said, and quick shout out for my friends at Digital Hourglass Media. I got to tell you that I got a package today. And it was from Amazon, and I didn't remember ordering anything from Amazon. And what the package was, well, it's apparently a mixer and some other things that are going to go into making this network a lot more complete. I am just getting to a point, by the way, where I am looking to recruit a couple of hosts for the network and see how that runs. I'm going to produce a couple of shows. Not just do my own, but produce a few, so long as they're not high impact on me and all that, as we move forward. Anyway. So there it is. Anybody who is interested and listens to the show and has an inkling about what they might want to do as a live radio host / podcaster and thinks that they can somehow swim in the same sea that I do over here, it is an open invitation, and you can email me at info@Ochelli.com. There I will gather all of the inquiries regarding this and bring some new people on. Might even have an interesting historical character or two to add to the mix, but I'm not going to get ahead of myself. I'm going to produce one new show at a time and see how it goes and all that. And, of course, they'll be added to the live 24/7 stream at Ochelli.com, where we replay the podcast, certainly, but also I insert some other things into the mix as we go forward. Okay, so those announcements. Big shout out to Digital Hourglass Media again, because this equipment is going to be essential in the things yet to come. So thank you over there, guys, and who knows, there might be other things coming with partnerships related to Digital Hourglass. Might even be a book or two or something like that that has my name on the front cover. Maybe, let's see. Anyway, all of that having been said, what is on my mind? I got to tell you, Jim Willie is an interesting interview for me every single time I talk to him, because I do not comport with a lot of things that Jim says. However, I've got to tell you that I do agree with a great deal of it as well. So it's a real mixed bag. Jim is still possessed with the idea that the Trump administration is on the right side of things. I think he's going to be extremely disappointed very, very soon. And, of course, people with money always get angry with me when I say this and tell me things like, I'd have a lot more contributions to the website and subscribers at Ochelli.com, and I'd have a lot more traffic if I didn't join in on the liberal idiot narrative and all that kind of stuff. I am not on the liberal side of the equation. As I say constantly, I don't believe there is a liberal side of the equation in the conventional sense any longer, so couldn't possibly join it even if I wanted to. And here's the problem, I don't belong there either. So I don't belong among your neocon thinkers, I don't belong among your right-wingers, I certainly do not belong among those that are paranoid about people based on the cultures they come from. I am not completely possessed with Russian propaganda, like so many alleged alternative media people are at this point in time. Being confronted with a message earlier on Skype, and I won't name names, but, earlier today I get this message that says, oh my God, America is about to go crazy. The people are going to freak out when the revelations hit the fan. And I said, well, gee, what are you talking about? The government shutdown? That's not a big deal. Relax. It happens. It's going to suck for some people, but, eventually things get back to normal. This is the normal foolish wrangling over issues that really don't count to most of us, and arguing over budgets when we don't really know what's in the budget, and people acting like they actually have control over the circumstances that they don't, et cetera, et cetera. Witness the Women's March today versus the pro-life Women's March or whatever that was going on, and Trump, who makes a completely incoherent statement during it, saying something like, after 9 months, a woman gets to give birth and it's an awful thing, when he meant to say that up to 9 months, partial birth abortions happen, and that's an awful thing. Look, I don't have that debate on this show, because as far as I'm concerned, it is pointless. You stand where you stand on this issue, and there's no reason to discuss it. I can't educate you about what it is you believe to be morally correct in that vein, so I don't bother. Anyway, I was confronted by this Skype message, America's going to freak out, and my automatic response was, well, gee, are you talking about the government shutdown? And no, they weren't, not at all. They were stating that because the dossier that was developed, with intelligence, bits of intelligence that certainly make the Trumpster dumpster fire look even worse than it generally does, if you have your eyes open and you're actually listening to the man speak. It's a fake, and when they find out it's a fake, it's going to be a problem. And on top of it, Hillary and Uranium One. Let that sink in for a minute. Hillary and Uranium One. No matter how many times you explain the facts to people about international deals, and by the way, it's not as though I'm excusing the Clintons from making deals on an international level that were damaging to the American people. I mean, they are part of the Bush crime family, so they wouldn't be doing their jobs if they weren't doing something that was the antithesis of what would be prosperity for us here in America, while keeping a smile on their faces and portraying themselves as characters that you could root for or against on the grand public stage. They couldn't possibly be Bush crime family members like they are. Unless they did that, they couldn't be like that unless, they were involved in some way as war profiteers and, the new neocons or whatever it is that you want to call these people that are tied directly to the intelligence agencies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. No, they are war criminal scumbags just like the Bushes. I mean, they fit right on in with their family friends. I hold up air quotes when I say family friends. Of course, you can't see that at home. Anyway, irrelevant. Next thing here is that, Uranium One and selling out these nuclear assets, stuff that could be used in the manufacture of nuclear weapons and therefore violating the security of the United States. And this is a non-story. This is only being utilized as propaganda by Russian bots on social media and the right wing who think that this is still something to be litigated. It was Hillary was actually the one working with the Russians, when meanwhile they all do. And this is why nothing's going to get done regarding any of these elitist scumbags, and Trump is one of them, and the Clintons are another set, and the Bushes are another set, and, it's a bunch of rich people at the country club arguing over who gets to eat the magic golf ball and who actually belongs to the right society where you get to lay in a coffin and masturbate or whatever their rituals are anymore. It's all irrelevant. They are collectively the elitist caste. And you're meant to root for one side or the other because you're supposed to have some sort of moral integrity. Meanwhile, I find it hysterically funny that people actually have to have a discussion as to whether there is legitimacy to a porn star, I don't know, spanking the Trumpster with a, what was it, a Forbes magazine, a Fortune magazine, I don't remember which. But anyway, one of those financial papers, he's getting spanked with one by a porn star, supposedly, who was paid hush money, and isn't this a debate? And, well, I guess it would be a debate if you had any conundrums about this. I don't know. But irrelevant. Not because I'm a Trump supporter, but irrelevant because who cares? For God's sake. And so a rich guy might have hired a porn star to do something or whatever and paid her hush money so it didn't look bad during the presidential campaign. Another non-story. All irrelevant crap. These guys who are engaged in the constant robbing, degradation, and, encouragement of rape and murder across the globe, the individuals who have no problem, drone striking children and supporting criminal states like Israel on a daily basis and making sure that we prop up the other scum that are, committing dirty wars against individuals in foreign nations who really, they're so bad off because they don't have access to our toxic water like we covered on Monday and what's actually still happening in Flint, Michigan. And I still say, what the hell was that white slime they were talking about? Anyway, all irrelevant. While you're being fluoridated, you got to root for the right guys who are killing the right people and demonizing the correct other people and making sure that they're pitting all of us against one another at all times. Is this part of the grand agenda? Is this, the way it's supposed to be? Is this what they taught you about in civics? Oh, wait a minute. They stopped teaching civics, I think. I don't know. Common Core is a weird thing, too. But anyway, let's not get into that because the conservatives supported the thing that the communists developed. Seems like anybody who's got an ism to sell you, is there to sell you out. How hard is that to understand? I don't know. Apparently people want to root for Agent Orange because he's a smart man. He's rich. But, if you are the liberal smart man, you're not so smart, even if you're rich. But wait a minute, I thought rich meant smart. Well, it does because, according to the Calvinistic principles, you're endowed by God with your relative ability to succeed and gather riches, which, the whole thing about trying to get a rich man through the eye of a needle along with a camel and God knows whatever else. Hey, forget the parables. I don't read the Bible anyway, right? Dude. Give me a break with this whole the liberals are destroying everything. There are no such thing as legitimate liberals. And here's the bad news for you who think you are on the conservative or right-wing side of things. There aren't any conservatives either. Because if there were, they would be outraged and looking for investigations into all of these individuals colluding with various foreign governments, not just Russia, but anybody who's got enough bank to buy whatever influence it is they wish. We have a government absolutely for sale that Greg Palast described rather well when he was talking about, stolen elections, which really aren't stolen, but manipulated for the sake of your entertainment anyway, when he said it was the best democracy money could buy. It certainly is. And people vote with their tacit acceptance of immoral, amoral, asinine, illogical, hypocritical, moronic statements being made by their alleged leaders on a daily basis simply because he agrees with me on certain subjects. I literally listened to individuals in the alleged heartland where it seems as though they don't have a lot of heart left, and, the family farm that Trump was describing doesn't really exist either. Fascinating to me that I heard these people saying, I agree with him and he's doing so great and everything's getting better. Although, yes, I realize that he's actually threatening to do stuff that will literally bankrupt me, cripple my family, end my generation's long commitment to a particular craft, that being farming, those people that actually used to provide the food for you when, industrialized farming wasn't quite a thing yet and Monsanto didn't own the patent on every single seed. Okay. No problem. Let him destroy my family. I'm going to be so committed to the blue or the red tie. You wonder why it is that I'm fed up and I don't make a lot of friends. It's because of exactly this. And meanwhile, is the government shutting down, the people that are going to be put in jeopardy, and the military, which is still going to be active. It's not as though the military goes to sleep because there's no paycheck there for them. You got to wait till the 1st for them to not have a paycheck, by the way. If they resolve this over the next 7 days, you might not be able to get government services, but the Army will continue to roll on, so will the Navy, Air Force, Marines. What a great place. Okay, you know what? All of that is going to go forward along with every other single thing, which is an essential service, including the paychecks, by the way, of these alleged representatives that are out there arguing over stuff that you don't even necessarily understand. Forget about caring about, okay, that is going to wind up smacking people in the face sometime later when the legislation is finally read by somebody, because these fools don't even read what it is they're allegedly voting about. But it makes perfect sense for them to represent most of the population who bothers to show up and herd themselves into what they call voting centers, where they cast a vow and give up their right to somebody else so that they can represent them supposedly during a process which literally does not actually select somebody from the people's point of view, although I assure you they are selected, to create the elect, which is, by the way, another word for the elite, to create the elected official to go there and do the bidding of who? The highest bidder. I'm so tired of all of that. And meanwhile, there's not much of an alternative to discussing things like this. Because if I had to sit here and tell you about how, the weather actually challenges people more on a daily basis than what this crap show that happens in the district of Semiramis actually contributes to their daily lives, regardless of which team they're allegedly rooting for and all that, you'd tell me that I was wrong, I didn't care, and I'm not actually on the side of those who are fighting for our freedom. Well, the only person that's going to fight for your ability to be free in any sense of the word is you. And you and me, we are responsible for our ability to be free. Not these chosen, damaged, privileged scumbags on one level or another. Doesn't matter. Dig deep enough in that closet, you're going to find the wretched mold. These people are not there to represent you and me, those of us who recognize that we're actually individuals and not necessarily limited to the actions of a label which was granted to us by some standard that was written by somebody whose name you don't know at all. And you know what else? Identity, in and of itself, is a mislabeled trap for everybody to sit and engage in all these silly arguments. And back to my Skype message. I said, why is it, after they gave me uranium-1, and what was the other silly thing? Excuse me. Oh, the dossier is fake. After they gave me these two things, and that in case people don't know, and I'm sure you do, the whole Trump dossier, which was created by the GPS group there. Geez, I forget their name already, because who cares, right? The Chris Steele thing, the former MI5, MI6, whatever, military intelligence asset of the British Crown that he used to be. That this is all a fraud and this is all a fake and this is all some kind of trick by the liberals to attack the real freedom fighter, Donald freaking Trump. I said, why is it that you only listen to right-wing propaganda at this point in time? Because, listen, I hear some of it, and then I listen to people attempting to be the left-wing propaganda. It doesn't play as well. Never has the intrigue or the venom dripping from the lips that the right wing has, so it's not quite as engaging. But I try and listen to both sides of the idiot equation so that I know the arguments that are going to come at me from the ill-informed and uninformed and completely socially and psychologically and, well, let's see what else. Oh, I don't know, globally ignorant people that buy one side of this equation or the other. It's interesting because I said, I guess you only listen to right-wing propaganda nowadays. And I got back, no, these are facts, and I only listen to facts. When somebody tells you that they only know facts and they only speak about facts, first of all, bow your head for a moment and feel bad for them because they're possessed with the idea that they still have the ability to recognize facts without any sort of bias, prejudice, whatever. And I'm guilty of it as well, but I make great efforts to not just be dictated to by what my emotional reactions are on every single topic that could possibly be presented to me. But anyway, you only listen to right-wing propaganda. No, I listen to facts. And then I gave, 5 paragraphs worth of facts, totally debunking the assertions of, these 2 particular data points that they were presenting to me that they believed to be factual. Got no response on that. But here's the funny part. Doesn't matter about the particulars here, in fact. There I am using that word. The funny part, and I do find this hilarious, is that this guy actually is in a position of believing that the American people collectively might actually rise up and get upset about the fact, in his mind, the fact that there is a corrupt and immoral government in place and that players in that corrupt, immoral government might have done things which are detrimental to the population. That was the whole thing. The American public, things are going to get crazy down there. There's going to be some sort of unrest. There's going to be a problem. You are first assuming that even if you were 100% correct about your alternative facts, that people would even notice. That people would notice anything that is beyond the tip of their nose. That is beyond the reach of their hand and whatever it is they can possibly shovel into their mouths in this country. You're assuming that there are Americans who would even consider this something to worry about. They're certainly not American, and I would have to say, if you are completely shocked by the idea that government officials might have done something corrupt and there might be fun and games going on in the intelligence community, I say to you, welcome to planet Earth. We've been here a little while, and you're new here. Nothing will make sense if you're a logical and rational creature, but by all means, buckle up. Anyway, you know what I got back for my paragraphs of facts? No response. Hours and hours later, no response. An urgency to tell me that the American people might go into some sort of revolt or be upset from someone who doesn't live in America, by the way, but does knowingly engage in just right-wing propaganda and is often swayed by it, regardless of what the facts are, tells me that they vetted the information that they're throwing back at me. And anyway, it is almost as frustrating as being told as you are sopping wet and you keep having to wipe your lids clear of that which continues to fall upon them, and you're freezing and shivering, that you are indeed not standing in a snowdrift in the middle of a blizzard, but the sun is shining, and you ought to put on a bathing suit. And quite often, this is what I get from my detractors anyway. Nonsensical attacks on reality and tying it to things I said, which, by the way, sometimes are imagined. A couple things to straighten out quickly, just as a side note. A couple things to straighten out quickly. I have never stated that I would have voted for Hillary Clinton. Got a couple of interesting emails about that because of my little Trump tirade. I think it was Wednesday. And I've never stated that she was a better choice or that there was a lesser of two evils. I have only ever stated that she would have been slightly less embarrassing on the global stage of meat puppets that are out there alleging to be leaders. I think she would have been slightly less embarrassing from a PR standpoint. Outside of that, I'm the guy who was telling you in 2015, 2016 that literally you're being presented with nothing that resembles a choice that could produce a lesser of two evils. And as it came down to these two main candidates, I continued to say that it is a lose-lose situation. Anyway, I am going to take a quick break here in order to readjust a few things and wrap my mind around something else, because I feel as though I'm repeating myself over and over again. You know, it's what did Yogi Berra say? It's deja vu all over again. Well, sometimes on this show, quite honestly, I feel as though that's what I'm doing when I'm left to my own devices. You know, I totally forgot, by the way, during the break, if anybody wants to call in, I announced this before the show and then just didn't follow through on it. If for some reason you want to join me for the last, 20 minutes or so of the show, the telephone number to reach me at is 252-301-2255, and I'm going to start opening up random phone lines a little more often in certain hours of the show, see if we can't get some callers and to interject something other than the echo chamber that is going to be attached to my mouth when I am left alone for an hour or two, or God knows, I might expand the show if you guys really start calling in. 252-301-2255. And I'm also Charles.Ochelli, and that's spelled Ochelli. Of course, if you're listening to the show, you probably know that already. But anyway, Charles.Ochelli on Skype. You can message me there, and I'll take a look at that. And also, if you want to call in again, 252-301-2255 is the number to reach me at, because I'd like anybody at random at this point.
What the world is now, with all the misery, conflict, destructive brutality, aggression, tremendous advancement in technology, and so on. It seems to me, though man has cultivated the external world and has more or less mastered it, inwardly he's still, as he was, he's still brutal, violent, aggressive, acquisitive, competitive, and he has built a society along these lines. The more one observes, and I think almost everyone, unless he's totally blind, deaf and dumb, is aware of the extraordinary contradictions of human beings, and to understand this extraordinary complex problem of existence, one must have tremendous passion, which cannot possibly be supplied by the intellect or by casual sentiment or emotionalism, or the passion aroused by committing oneself to a particular course of action, or belonging to a particular political or religious group. That does give certain quality of intensity, a certain elan, a certain drive. But through it all, there is the demand for gratification, for pleasure. And the whole structure of society, with its morality, with its gods, with its culture, with its entertainment, is based on pleasure. So we hope that you will so listen to what is being said. Not hear a lot of words, to a lot of ideas. But ideas.
Let's interrupt Pushmati with a little Cirrus Minor here on the Ochelli Effect. Still taking my break, but I'll be right back, guys.
I'm sending you this one just because I think the weed's kicking in, but Ochelli, you ain't got no alibi. News, entertainment, and more. You will learn something, children's. Ochelli.com.
All right. During that break was Cirrus Minor. Does the napkin smell like chloroform? And to get the complete track, I guess you search out Cirrus Minor on YouTube, and you can find them there. And I'm hoping to get some more tracks from those guys because I enjoy their music and need a break every now and then when I feel like, I don't know, my head's going to explode while I'm trying to wrap my mind around the ignorance of other people. Anyway, I'm going to try and calm down now a little bit. We'll see how it works out. So is there any other news that's actually news? I'll tell you, it doesn't seem like it, does it? Is anybody paying attention to the dirty wars in other parts of the world? Is anybody paying attention to exactly what we covered with Jim there, which, by the way, I'm extremely grateful that he went into the significance of the dope trade on the global scale. That is something that I don't often hear from Jim in his interviews, but I got to tell you that heroin is, it's currency. It flows, and it certainly ends up being part of what spikes the vein of the international banking system. A great deal of those mechanisms would absolutely disappear without it. So at all times, you need to consider this part of the equation, and it should not be forgotten or lost on anybody that this has been the condition, certainly for a long time. I mean, there is no evidence that it ever seceded really from the world stage during the time, or should I say it ever, seceded, not a good word. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It never did depart the world stage, if you will. It never stopped being a player in the grand exposition that is the play of global interaction, monetary, social engineering that goes on a daily basis and has been going on for, I don't know, ever since I was alive anyway. Can't really testify to it personally before that, but we do know historically that the heroin wars and various other opiate-based wars have been part of the equation, and it seems to me like every time I step a little further back into the history of warfare, I find that there is a drug element to it. And, there's a reason why they call it the opiate of the masses. And there's a reason why, even after it's already represented in one of those wonderful instruction guides for the elite caste called either Brave New World or 1984, in one of those two, I can't remember which at this point in time, Soma was a drug before it was a drug. Except there it was meant to keep people pacified, happy, and meant to be a reward. Certainly, Oxycontin and Percocet is kind of like that a little bit, depending on which circles you run in today. And heroin is still the cheaper alternative available to you. But, hey, pay no attention to what Big Pharma, the military-industrial complex, and the intelligence community want to sell you. Doesn't really matter, because, after all, we got to make sure that there's plenty of people paying for the use of a plant like cannabis on a minute-by-minute basis, being unnecessarily incarcerated at accelerated rates constantly. That is something that needs to be considered at all times. Meanwhile, it looks like Sunshine On is trying to join me during this conversation. Guess what? I don't even want your positivity right now. So sit aside. I don't want that. A random caller I'll take, by the way, because I need something random. I'll do that, but I don't think anybody would dare call in at the moment. 252-301-2255. I'll take random, but I can't handle going in the direction that I know Sunshine will take me in right now, because I'm angry. And I'm not even sure why it is I'm especially angry at this particular moment in time, but I got to tell you that it's probably just a conglomerate of all the things that have come together to form this particular day. We find ourselves in 2018, still in the prostrate position against individuals who seem to want to dictate to us the way that we should behave all over the place, and I can't get people to stop possessing themselves with the idea that some Messiah figure, whether he's painted orange or he's a fictional, not fictional, where did that word come from? Fictional character from some ancient writ. It's kind of irrelevant. Stop looking for the Messiah. It's time to look in the mirror. I don't know what to do about this anymore. I really don't, especially given that conversation I was describing before I took a break. I mean, it is almost as dumb. Well, no, maybe it is just as dumb. You know what? It is just as dumb. Never mind. It is just as dumb as the people that think if you remove a couple of these key figures by name from the equation, things are going to get better just by default. I mean, yes, they will change because a couple of people have personality traits that are just a touch more deplorable than others. It is true that the general character that is being presented might change a little bit, but the actual condition that you endure is there because of the system itself, and it is not because it has been suddenly corrupted and there are less corrupt people that are going to come into the system. The system itself is corruption by definition. You know, if you don't understand that, as I'm talking about heroin and things like this, that's not an outrage. That's part of doing business in reality. If you don't understand that, your suffering is actually being monetized along with everything else you're feeding into regarding the surrogate reality that's meant to disconnect you from your own natural being, if you don't understand that part of the equation, I don't know what to tell you anymore. And I'm finding over and over again that people have given themselves a delusional headache that their head continues to swell and they're not sure where the pain is coming from, but they give themselves this delusional headache that they're somehow awake, aware, and involved in some sort of solution regarding getting at real information. All they've done is amplify the fears and paranoias that they once engaged in with a cause. And then they identify with a personality that they somehow think is on their side, and then they choose an enemy. And the enemy is, again, predetermined by a lot of these old prejudices. They're not my religion. They're not my race. They weren't from my country. Meanwhile, let's debate hole in house. They're not speaking my language. Well, let me tell you something else. You're not speaking your language. You take a listen to the definitions and the interesting things that are hidden in plain sight when Jordan Maxwell was talking, the stuff that I talked about with Aaron Franz, the stuff that I talk about all the time, the stuff that the Greek even discusses, showing you etymology, the stuff, one of my favorite chatters that comes into the room at Ochelli.com, which, by the way, live chat room is available there all the time. You can leave messages there when the show's not live, but feel free to participate over there in the chat room, which I'm not even looking at the moment. Sorry, although I'm supposedly present there. Isn't that a perfect metaphor for most of what these people that claim constantly that they're awake? Isn't that a perfect metaphor for them? They're really inserted into a chat room that they're not participating in, except their chat room is life. Mine is because it's a little difficult to keep track of things visually, excuse me. Anyway, what was I saying? Right. So they get possessed with the old possessions and the old ideals and a sense of nostalgia that at one time America was great, at one time their country was great, at one time their family was safe, at one time. Well, again, maybe I can only speak for the past couple of decades because I'm 45 years old. I know I walk with a cane, and I probably sound like I'm 70 years old and angry as hell, and when I'm not doing this radio show, I'm outside just simply screaming at kids that come anywhere too close to my lawn. I know that probably sounds like who I am, but I'm not. I'm 45 years old, been alive since the early 70s, and I got to tell you that observing the world around me, things were never great back then either. They were slightly less complex in certain ways, but they were also a little more legitimate in other ways, and they were also just as disconnected, and they were also relatively as ignorant as they are today. And I do mean everything around you. Your government was as ignorant, your neighbors were as ignorant, your family was as ignorant as they are today. It just looks a lot better because they can create an avatar instead of having to pull out one of those little things they used to call a photograph that people kept in their wallets along with their fake currency backed by nothing, because pieces of paper, after all, have to have value, and human life is an irrelevant thing in the equation. Looking to your left or to your right or swinging a dead cat in your local neighborhood, whatever it is you do, if you are doing that and encountering other walking upright individuals that are not orangutans or some form of kangaroo, I got to tell you that until we start looking at one another as men and women, you know, that is my fellow man, that is my fellow woman, these are the individuals who are just as entitled to breathe this air as I am, regardless of how stupid, annoying, painfully uncomfortable they are to be around, whatever. They are entitled to an existence just like you are. And often you'll find the less you insert your prejudices into their prejudices, the less friction can be caused. But these are lessons that the majority of the American populace has decided to ignore. These appear to be globally ignorant things that are occurring, and meanwhile I didn't even touch upon flat earth or any of that in this hour. But meanwhile, the Ochelli effect is just about done for Friar's Day, and that does mean I'm done for the week, although I am considering doing some specials over the weekend, and I'm going to have upcoming the man who wrote the book Survival of the Richest, Donald Jeffries. He'll be coming up soon. Rex Bradford will be coming up on the show very soon. I intend to contact Larry Pinckney once again because we need a little bit of an inspiration. Of course, the regulars that you're regularly scheduled programming or deprogramming, which is what this actually is, often carries along with it, like Michael Swanson, like Carmine Savastano, like our other semi-regular friends, Aaron Franz, Pierce Redmond, and even J.P. Satilli, although he comes to me once a month, very much like the Ochelli menstrual cycle at this point. I got to tell you that it is good to clean things out with J.P. once a month anyhow, regardless of how uncomfortable it might get at times. There's my joke for the evening, and I am all done, guys. No matter who you are, where you are, I hope you're doing well, because you're listening to this show and indulging me so that I don't completely lose my mind and have to get stuck with these thoughts rattling around in my head all alone. That's that, guys. And meanwhile, if you want to participate and become a part of the effect, you can do so by contributing information at info@ochelli.com, volunteers for upcoming shows that I can produce, all of that good stuff, and, you know, donations via PayPal are helpful as well. Could use another cup of coffee. Anyway, I'm all done. Remember, I am merely Ochelli. You are the effect. Be well.